Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Ultimate Red Skull. Making his debut in the Ultimate Comics Avengers 1 back in 2009, Ultimate Red Skull is a lot different than the Red Skull casual moviegoers would have guessed at this point. See, the son of Steve Rogers, yes, and Gail Richards. They even hid him and trained him to become the next Captain America. It's wild. The Ultimates are wild. He always feared that he would never live up to his father's expectations. I mean, fair. At just age 17, he killed all the doctors and soldiers at the military base. He was in charge, and his side hustle was planning this badass escape in the meantime. He then got the haunting look by using a kitchen knife and carving his head. So that's disgusting. Nice gross way to kick off this list. And before we continue on to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and Hulk smash that like button because it really helps us out here at the studio. You guys are the best. Now back to the list. Coming in at number 9, we have LYRA. Taking place on Earth 8009, beginning with Hulk Raging Thunder issue 1. We find Lyra Walters, or sometimes referred to as Savage She-Hulk. She is the daughter of Thundra and Earth 616 Hulk. So yeah, she's from Earth 8009 in the 23rd century, and at that time the Earth was split into different factions, right? So the guys faction were like warriors, they looked up to like past heroes. Then the women came together under the United Sisterhood Republic, and they were outgunned and outmanned, like literally outmanned. So Thundra got sent to Earth, our Earth 616, where she met our Hulk, and had a baby. How cute. Lyra actually gets stronger when she's calm, and she's able to tap into the gamma sight, which means she can see the flow of gamma radiation. I'm doing my best interpretation of gamma radiation. Can't see the green, but it's a lot of gamma behind me. So she becomes a smarter and smoother fighter in this state. But if she becomes angry, she'll actually become weaker, which is fun. Let's play with that idea of it. Number 8, ULTRON. In the MCU, Tony and Bruce are the masterminds behind ULTRON. But in the comics, it was actually Hank Pym. See, ULTRON made his first debut back in 1968 in Avengers 54. And beneath the crimson cowl, we discover is indeed ULTRON Pym. I love how in Age of Ultron they used a red cowl to hide his new and improved look. It was a nice reveal. In the comics, Hank Pym was actually the father of Ultron, so there's been many versions of Ultron, seeing as he constantly wants to upgrade himself and be bigger, badder, and bolder. He actually has the same brain patterns as Hank Pym. He figured it needed a personality, much like our MCU version of Ultron is basically Tony Stank, but with more, you know, metal, rage, fire, and blood and horribleness. Number 7, Franklin Richards. Born in New York City, Franklin Richards, of course being the son of Reed Richards and Susan Storm, is quoted from Galactus himself as the most powerful mutant ever. Nice, that's it. Put that on a resume. Boop, that's sick. He is a mutant beyond Omega power. You heard it from Big Guns himself. See, Franklin was a member of Gen X, and he's also a future X-Men member in the Ultimate X-Men comics. Some of his powers include vast reality warping, psionic powers. He also has control over the universe, so awesome. He's got precognitive powers, so his dreams tip him off on what's gonna happen in real life. That happens to me, except it's always embarrassing, and they end up happening. He can see the future in his dreams. That's so OP. He can resurrect the dead, he can time travel, teleport, astral project, and he can duplicate planets and or people. So yeah, ego, living planet. You're doomed either way, pal. At a young age, he was able to create a pocket universe, and then in Fantastic Four issue 604, this dude even took on not 1, not 2, but 3 Celestials. One of them he actually just took out with 1 punch. 1 punch, man. 1 punch, man. Huh. Needless to say, Franklin Richards is not somebody you want to mess with in any of his pocket universes. Franklin has a middle name, and that's Benjamin, which is nice because they named him after their good pal, Ben Grimm, the Thing. My middle name's Douglas. Number 6, Red She-Hulk. So this mysterious character just showed up when the Red Hulk gathered a team to hunt down Domino. So while Wolverine was fighting Red Hulk, he like scratched his eyes out, which is a mess. And then just as Wolverine was about to finish him off, bam! Red She-Hulk comes in to save the day, and she's fierce. Like right off the bat, she taunts Wolverine by showing him her fancy new outfit that used to belong to Domino. Like she had Domino's gun, she had Elektra's sai, and then she bragged about how she killed the two and took their weapons and clothes. So she's kind of a hot mess. She held off the fight long enough for Red Hulk to recuperate, and then unbeknownst to Red Hulk until later on, the identity of the new mysterious Red Badass is actually none other than Betty Ross. General Ross became the Red Hulk and was an Avenger at one point. So his daughter, Betty, naturally also became the Red She-Hulk. Now, I know what I said about her earlier makes her sound like an absolute savage. In some of these comics, yeah, she is. She even killed the Hulk in Incredible Hulk 634, so you gotta check more of her out. Her powers are pretty nuts. During the scrap with Wolverine, she spat in his face, which is yucky. First of all, we don't do that anymore. 6 feet apart, people. But secondly, her saliva is acid. So she grabbed Red Hulk and they both ducked out in the sewers while his eyes melted. Yuck. Number 5, Stinger, aka Cassie Lang. This one I think we actually might see in the MCU sooner than we think. So, yes. The daughter of Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, is one of my favorite parts of the Ant-Man films. She's so cute, she's funny, the way they interact, it's just good. It's a nice father-daughter relationship that we kind of saw with Morgan and Tony, but it was just nicer, and this lasted much longer. So in the comics, she actually took over for her father after his death and Avengers disassembled. Now, I don't think Paul Rudd's gonna leave the MCU anytime soon, but if/when he does, I think they've shown enough growth of Cassie Lang, literally, that they can have her suit up now. I mean, who knows, maybe after he supposedly blipped, Cassie wanted to like avenge him and stuff. We didn't really see a lot of that side. Even in the comics, she was asked by Scarlet Witch to join the Young Avengers. Then she donned the name Stinger after she died and came back to life. Now, while I don't think this exactly is gonna happen anytime soon in the movies, I'm getting an idea that she works alongside Scott Lang in the next movie. That's my prediction. See, Scott watched Hank and Hope play catch up during this franchise. She practically begged him to get her own suit, but Hank's like, no, or Michael Douglas said no like 1,000 times, yelled a lot too. Scott probably saw this and knew it was gonna happen eventually with him and Cassie, right? So we had that little time jump in Endgame, now we've got an older Cassie in a world that's pretty dangerous. Maybe we'll see it, maybe we won't. Maybe it's Maybelline. And number 4, Valeria Richards. The second child, as you would have guessed, by Reed Richards and Susan Storm. She made her debut in Fantastic Four Volume 3, Issue 54. Valeria is also so badass like her brother. She may not be as powerful as her brother, with the whole Omega level pocket universe jazz, but she's super smart, smarter than her dad even. Pretty sick. She's also more into working alongside her uncle, Victor Von Doom. There's always the cool uncle everybody loves, Can't help it, just too cool. Hashtag too cool for school. She believes that Reed also never really used his knowledge to help people. Rather, he just did things for himself, which is a common theme in superhero worlds. Donning the nickname Brainstorm in the meantime, hopefully we get to see her sometime soon. Number 3, Scotty Summers. Making his debut in Mutant X issue 1 back in 1998, Scotty Summers is the son of Avengers member Havoc and Madeline Pryor. The Inferno event is probably the most noted piece of his history. See, they wanted to use Scotty Summers as a sacrifice in order to open up a portal to the Goblin Force. Madeline saved him, but in doing so, she became possessed by the Goblin Queen. This was when he showed his true power. That power just happens to be up there with Franklin Richards. Celestial level, baby. He's the best. He has soul sense empathy, so he has the ability to sense the goodness in others without even touching them. And on top of that, he can read minds, so it doesn't matter how you feel or think, Scotty already knows. And Psionic Firebird is pretty wild too. He can turn into a psychic firebird whose claws can harm you physically and or mentally. Nice. Number 2, Vision. The son of Iron Man and Banner. In Captain America Civil War, we see the fallout of Tony and Cap begin. See, after creating an evil robot son who wants nothing but destruction, Tony figures, well, maybe if I make another one, the new body and Mind Stone will kind of be good. And it did. It was pretty sweet, and he kicks ass. Vision started out as his android that belonged to Tony Stark. And then by time Infinity War, Banner says the line, "You lost another Superbot?" And then Tony responds with, "I didn't lose him, he's evolving." So this is an interesting time in the MCU. Vision is like the son of Iron Man, and then after we lost him, I knew there would be more. Even in this poster, there's a glitch, a little speck of color left in it. In Infinity Gauntlet, we see a colorless Vision after he meets a similar demise. So when that poster was released, I figured there was a part of him that was downloaded and left somewhere, because Marvel doesn't just make printing errors. I don't know why we didn't look into this more. So with WandaVision releasing on Disney Plus next year, this could become reality. Who knows where the baby Avenger will end up, but I'm excited and also very nervous. Please be okay. And finally at number 1, we got Scar. Making his debut in World War Hulk issue 5, he was conceived during the Planet Hulk storyline. He's a son of Hulk and Kyra the Old Strong. After Hulk had spent time on Sakaar, he also started spending a little bit of alone time, you know? So after Hulk had left the planet, Sakaar had popped out of a cocoon and he resembled a teenager after just a year. So, growing pretty fast. Now, given the fact he was born to a not so chill planet, he learned to kill like it was a normal thing. Well, he needed to kill for survival. Eventually, he ends up on Axeman Bone's radar. So Scar retains the old power as well, so he has the ability to control tectonic energy, like summon lava and magma, and he can also tap into energy projection. Out of the many children of the Hulk, Scar easily takes the top of that list, and also the top of this list as well, because he's here, so there it is.
Number 10. Lasher. Lasher is one of the symbiotes that Venom was forced to give birth to by the Life Foundation, who kidnapped the symbiote in order to make Venom make more symbiotes for them. Which is really messed up and explains why the Venom symbiote was so apprehensive when it was pregnant following its experience with the Life Foundation. Each symbiote that it gave birth to with the Life Foundation seemed to have its own special powers, and Lasher's was that they could remote control from a distance a non-sentient host in addition to their main one, using this other host as a form of reconnaissance or like a scout, or simply to just be in two places at once, which is pretty cool. I've always wanted to be able to be in multiple places at once. I could get so many things done. Number 9. Dylan. Dylan might not initially seem like a child of Venom, but in a way he is. In fact, it's even been suggested that he might actually be a part of Venom, a piece of the symbiote broken off and molded into something new, or at the very least blended with something new. Venom was a genetic contributor at the time of Dylan's conception, as Anne Wang, his mother, was bonded with the Venom symbiote when she became pregnant with Dylan. Dylan is therefore kind of like Eddie's, Anne's, and Venom's child all together. Dylan initially demonstrated powers which allowed him to control and bend symbiotes to his will, in addition to repelling and resisting them if they wanted to bond to him and he didn't want to. This made him insanely powerful. However, during the King in Black event, he lost this power, which it turns out was attached to the God of Light when his father Eddie Brock destroyed Null, who was attempting to take hold of Dylan's body via the living abyss inside him. As it stands now, Dylan is bonded with the Venom symbiote, which grants him some power, but he is also still very new to this whole thing, meaning he's not particularly skilled or really powerful just yet, which is why I ranked him so low. So low, despite his cool powers he once had that were pretty unique. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Venom lists, you want to learn about more of the Venom family, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Riot. Riot is also known as being one of the strongest symbiotes to have come from the ones Venom gave birth to while being kept prisoner by the Life Foundation. Riot is often suggested to be the strongest of the litter, at least the physically strongest. He is the most buff of the litter, and he has also been referred to as Mr. Riot, which is a name I honestly love a lot. Because of Riot's inherent super strength, the symbiote generally prefers to use its tendrils to create blunt force weapons, which it can then use in combat against its opponents, or to brute strength force its way through any obstacles in its path. Riot Smash. Mr. Riot Smash. Number 7. Scream. Scream was maybe one of the most powerful of the forcibly birthed Life Foundation offspring of Venom, and I mean powerful just in the overall sense. I say was as well because technically Scream was destroyed by Andy Benton, its latest host. In fact, with Andy it was also at its most powerful, as Andy could also summon and wield Hellfire, which it would be immune to so long as Andy willed that. Unfortunately, in the end, the Scream symbiote and Andy ended up in a fight against one another, where Andy was forced to defend herself using the very same Hellfire against Scream this time, as opposed to with Scream. This unfortunately kills the symbiote. While it was alive, Scream's powers were similar to the Venom symbiote, which included the added level up of creating wings for itself and using those wings to fly around, and the unique ability of turning its tendrils into hair that they could then manipulate at will, similar to Medusa of the Inhumans. Also, I just like hair powers, I think they're cool. Number 6. Hybrid. Hybrid is the combination of 4 of the Life Foundation symbiotes, all of which were forcibly created offspring of Venom. Hybrid is the entity that exists when Phage, Agony, Lasher, and Riot come together. Being a combined symbiote, Hybrid has all the powers of the individual symbiotes that make it up. Mostly this means it is power similar to relatives such as Venom and Carnage, but it can also absorb chemicals, produce acid which it can use to attack with, balance the emotions of its host, host and can remote control a smaller non-sentient host such as a dog while still maintaining a bond with its main sentient host at the same time, which obviously that's a power that comes from Lasher. Number 5. Sleeper. Sleeper is the sibling of Dylan and also the 7th symbiote baby of Venom. They are most definitely thought of as Dylan's sibling, as the challenging pregnancy that Venom went through to give birth to Sleeper was not something carried entirely alone. In fact, Eddie even helped directly with this birth, and it was perhaps one of the first pregnancies that was more openly discussed with Eddie, Venom's partner. Eventually at least. And of course in comparison to the other symbiote babies that Venom has had while with Eddie, which I feel like Venom normally didn't even talk about at all. Especially with Carnage. Carnage was like, what? And then later Eddie was like, what was that? And I was like, oh, I had a baby, whatever. Sleeper seems to be autonomous and doesn't specifically need a host, unlike some other symbiotes, especially in those early comic book days. I mean, back in the day, Venom was like, if I don't have a host, I'm literally gonna die. In this way, Sleeper is more of a giver, where their host would benefit more from their bond as opposed to the other way around. Sleeper boosts the abilities of its host and provides the additional power of producing various chemicals, some of which can be used to influence the emotional response of enemies, bending them to their will, making them sleepy, making them less aware so Sleeper can like sneak around more easily. Lots of cool stuff. And technically Sleeper can also kind of use those chemicals to like get a little bit of telepathy going on, which is pretty cool. Number 4. Carnage. Definitely one of the most powerful children of Venom out there, and one that we can't have a list without would be Carnage. Carnage is much more ruthless than Venom and much more prone to violence, though this is likely because of the influence of this symbiote's first and main host, and often their chosen host to this day, Cletus Cassidy, notorious serial killer. Carnage has proven to be so powerful that on countless occasions it's required both Spider-Man and Venom, and oftentimes a whole assembly of other superpowered beings to put a stop to them. Even when others think they can somehow control Carnage, the symbiote has proven to be unstoppable and much too much to handle in most cases. Not only that, but even when Carnage turns to the side of good during the events of Axis, they still prove to be super deadly due to how deranged they are. Even when Carnage was like, I'm gonna be a hero, it was a rough time. Cletus Cassidy inside was like, I don't really know how to be a hero. Do we still kill people? Can I still chop this person up? I like them. I want to chop them up. Number 3. Toxin. Toxin isn't specifically a child of Venom, but is more their grandchild, I suppose. Toxin is an offspring of Carnage, but is believed to be even more powerful than both Carnage and Venom combined. Toxin has all the powers of Carnage, but is believed to be stronger. Additionally, it is said that they have a more strong resistance to heat and sonic waves, making them a tougher opponent in most cases. While Toxin definitely has a dark side, they can also be reined in, which is what their first host, Patrick Mulligan, tried to focus on helping them with, mentoring them and trying to help them learn how to become a hero. So despite Toxin coming from Carnage, they're not inherently bad, though they definitely do have a little bit of a Carnage streak running through them. That's what happens when you're Carnage's child, I guess. Number 2. Silence. Silence was actually what came out of Scream's death. Andy Benton bonded with Silence, believing the symbiote at first to be Scream. In reality, Silence was made out of Scream's remains combined with anti-venom, making it much more powerful in theory than Scream. Technically, it is not a direct child of Venom, but it was made out of the remains of Venom's child Scream, and Venom's sibling, in a sense, anti-venom, known for being one of the most powerful symbiotes around. So because of this, I'm gonna count it as a relative slash offspring of sorts, albeit a very weird, very comic book complicated one. I mean, it's kind of like a clone of Venom's child, but then also like kind of part Venom's sibling, so yeah, I don't know. Number 1. Codex. This is technically an alternate future version of Dylan where he becomes a version of the King in Black instead of his dad. Well, at least a version of that on Earth. We meet this version of the character in Venom in the arc prior to the King in Black event. Dylan and Eddie of Earth 616 must team up in order to defeat this alternate god mode version of Dylan, who has become ruler of Earth, creating his own hive mind of symbiotes there that he himself controls. Now, if you thought Null was scary, then you would probably also really love this story featuring Dylan of Earth 1051, known at first as Codex. This version of Dylan would fall under the influence of Null, which was ultimately what turned him dark. Dylan of Earth 616 6 and his father would help to break the influence Null had over Codex, only for him to fall into a coma and then later be pursued and bonded with by Carnage. Dylan as Carnage in this reality made him even more terrifying than he'd been as Codex. Once more he ruled the Earth, but this time a lot more sadistically, killing and tormenting its inhabitants as he pleased.
Coming in as the first entry on our list at number 10, we've got to go with Kuin, the teenage alien clone. During a misadventure that saw Wolverine stranded on a planet at the edge of the cosmos, far away from any other X-Men or Avengers, he found himself coming face to face with a young boy that seemed to share his exact power set, including an adamantium skeleton. Named Kuin, this boy is eventually revealed to have been created by an alien race that worships Wolverine and sees him as a missing link needed to create the ultimate being. Unfortunately, it's also implied that the cloning process was imperfect and that the adamantium attached to Kuin's bones might not be able to grow with the rest of his body, leaving this story just as tragic as it is odd. Coming in at number 9, we have Jimmy Hudson, the son of Ultimate Wolverine. In the Ultimate Marvel Universe, things weren't looking too hot. Magneto had gone off the deep end and murdered a large portion of both the world population and the entirety of the X-Men, even killing Wolverine with a blast powerful enough to rip the adamantium off his bones. Following this universe-changing event, a young boy named Jimmy Hudson was gifted a post-death holographic message from Wolverine revealing himself to be the kid's father. With the same healing factor and claws as his dad, along with the ability to change what substance his claws are actually made of, Jimmy Hudson was an ideal candidate as the X-Men looked to reform after the death of so many members. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with Torrent. On the alternate world of Earth 9811, the planet was never reverted back from being a patchwork of different realities named Battleworld, and led to many superheroes deciding to settle down on this new plane of existence. Born to Wolverine and Storm, Torrent was a hot-tempered young mutant who possessed both the power to manipulate the weather and heal back from any injury, an incredibly powerful combo that meant she had little to fear when summoning some trademark lightning. Joining a new team of X-Men determined to wipe the robotic Sentinels off their new home, Torrent is definitely a mutant you do not want to mess with. Coming in at number 7, we have Saberclaw. Hailing from Earth 98-2, this son of Wolverine and an unknown woman absolutely hates his father. So much so that it seems to have literally changed him into appearing more reminiscent of Sabretooth than his actual dad. Wearing adamantium sheaths on his bone claws to make them even deadlier, Saberclaw was briefly a member of this universe's Sinister Six before eventually being convinced to put his differences aside with his father and help defend the world from the threat of Galactus and the daughter of Loki. Just another day in the wonderful world of weird comic book family dynamics. Coming in at number 6, we've got to go with Wild Thing. Hailing from the same universe as her half-brother Saberclaw, this daughter of Wolverine and the ninja Elektra has managed to stay on the side of good and become a teenage superhero that would be notable even without famous parents. With increased speed, strength, and the ability to create claws out of pure psychic energy, Wild Thing is an incredibly powerful mutant that showcases the best influences of the X-Men and proves that even when the first generation is ready to retire, there'll always be an angry clawed mutant ready to protect the X-Men name. Coming in at number 5, we have the villainous Raze Darkholm. Hailing from a dark alternate future where Wolverine and Mystique had a son, Raze is an even more powerful shapeshifter than his mother, with all of the bloodlust and rage of his father unleashed. Traveling to the main Marvel timeline and impersonating Kitty Pryde in order to get close enough to strike at his father, Raze planned to wipe out humanity in this reality in order to create a safe haven across the multiverse for all of mutant kind, and was willing to do anything and impersonate anyone to achieve it. Coming in at number 4, we've got to go with something a little more live action than the rest of these comic books, with X-24 from the movie Logan. An allegedly perfect clone of Wolverine, but with none of the compassion or humanity, X-24 was treated like an attack dog and followed the orders of Xander Rice to hunt down and capture the real Wolverine and the young mutant girl he was protecting. Based on Wolverine during his prime years, he was able to physically overcome the true Wolverine and was only able to be defeated by a bullet made of pure adamantium to the back of the head. Talk about overkill. Coming in at number 3, we have Hulk Jr. And no, I promise this didn't suddenly become a list about Bruce Banner's kids. In the alternate future that's often seen in stories involving Old Man Logan, Hulk Jr. is the last surviving grandson of Bruce Banner, and the last member of the infamous and cannibalistic Hulk gang. Following their defeat by Wolverine, Logan decided to raise this young gamma-mutated child as a member of his own family. So, while the two might not be biologically related, Hulk Jr. grew into a heroic figure because of how he was raised, and would go on to start a new generation of heroes on this post-apocalyptic world, bringing some hope to a land filled with tragedy. Coming in at number 2, we have Laura Kinney, aka X-23. Created by the Weapon X project when they were attempting to remake the success of Wolverine with a genetic sample that had a damaged Y chromosome, Laura is otherwise a perfect clone of Logan in every way. While her early years were traumatic and occasionally brought her into conflict with Wolverine and the X-Men, in recent years she's actually taken up the name of Wolverine herself, living up to the title that's inspired mutants for generations and helping carve out a new place for mutant kind in a new world. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Daken, the dark son of Wolverine. Named after the Japanese term for mongrel dog or bastard, Daken is the tragic child that Wolverine never knew about, his mother being murdered before Wolverine even knew he had a son. Cut from his mother's body, Daken was raised to hate his father, and in their very first encounter slashed open his stomach and left him to bleed to death. With the same incredible healing abilities and bone claws as his dad, Daken has had a long road of trying to find his proper place in the world, and has fought on the sides of both good and evil over the course of his tragic life. In recent years though, Daken does seem to have found some sense of belonging on the island of Krakoa, and has recently become a member of the new X-Factor team. Let's hope he can catch a little bit of a break from his life being so angsty.